Now, during the Jeep Black Friday sales event, get $12,500 in lease support on the 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland 4xE. $12,500 lease support includes cash allowances and $7,500 federal EV incentive provided by lender as a capitalized cost reduction and is subject to change without notice. Lessees cannot claim federal tax credit on their personal tax return. Please confirm this information to ensure its accuracy and availability. Consult a tax professional for details and eligibility. Not all lessees will qualify. Residency restrictions apply. Take delivery from dealer stock by 11/30. Jeep is a registered trademark.
When you download the Baker's app, you have easy access to savings every day. Get the most out of weekly sales and receive personalized coupons to save on your favorite items, all while earning 1 fuel point for every $1 spent. Baker's makes it easy to save while you shop, whether it's in-store or online, so you get the most value out of every trip, every time. Download the Baker's app now to save big on your next purchase. Baker's, fresh for everyone. Must have a digital account to redeem offers. Restrictions may apply. See site for details.
Miss Marian Collins. Good evening. Carl Van Doren.
How do you do?
Ellery Queen.
I'm Ellery. I'm Queen.
And our genial master of literary ceremonies, that distinguished humorist and light versifier, Ogden Nash.
On behalf of our sponsor, welcome audience, seen and unseen, to the first broadcast of Author. Briefly put, Author is a game of story invention in which you'll be able to hear how America's most famous writers invent their story plots. Ellery Queen, whom you all know as collaborators on detective fiction, and I will be with the program from week to week. 2 different guest authors will play the game with us each broadcast. And tonight's guests are Miss Marian Collins, radio and short story writer, and Carl Van Doren, distinguished critic and novelist whose recent biography of Benjamin Franklin is among America's best sellers. The game of Author begins with a little drama. It's called the $2,001 Watch. The scene is Spiffin's famous Fifth Avenue jewelry shop. As the store opens, the day's first customer, a shabbily dressed man, enters and speaks to Mr. Stillman, sales clerk.
Good morning. I'd like to see a watch.
Yes, of course. Any particular kind of watch?
No, any watch.
Very good, sir. Now here, sir, is a very fine platinum case jeweled watch.
What's the price of it?
$2,000, sir.
I'll give you $1 for it.
$1?
That's what I said.
Excuse me, sir, but are you serious?
I offer you $1 for that watch, and I mean
Get
it.
out of here! Get out! Is this your idea of a joke? Why,
What's the commotion above?
Why, this man, Mr. Spiffin, has the nerve to